Hello and welcome to the Gooners podcast. Hey, Mike, at what point during that intro do you regret starting the intro? Because I
literally was good. My first
in.
words on this podcast were going to be, I always regret having that intro on when we have an esteemed guest rather than just our own. Yeah, I should have probably screened it a little bit more. But Andy, you good? This is 2 in a row for you, I believe.
Yeah, it is. Top four's on.
Top four's on for you. Jared, feeling all right? Doing well? Got the, Dennis Burkamp thing behind you, which is disrespectful to today's guest, I think, but we'll allow it.
That's what this podcast is all about. But no, doing good. Back to be glad from a short hiatus. And I think, forget Andy's top 4. We're going top 3.
Going top 3. Well, speaking of
chase.
Top 3, we have this man is either top 3, possibly top 1 of the guests that we've had on the podcast. So we are thrilled. I normally do a 5-minute over-the-top introduction. I'm not going to waste anybody's time and waste Alan's airtime by doing that again. You've seen him on the podcast. You've seen him on the screen. You know him. You love him. Alan Smith, welcome back to the podcast. Great to have you.
Hey, pleasure to be here, chaps. Really good. Yeah, look, I love that intro as well. The credits, fantastic.
It's all that guy. I did an intro that was much more embarrassing than that, and it looked like a kindergarten put it together. But yeah, we're in the big time now. So just want to say hello to everyone that's joining us in chat. If you're not here yet, you're not hearing this, but you're late. Thanks to Mark, Brady's Banana, Danny's in here, Dempsek, Arnie's in here, and a few others. We'll give another shout out to you in a little bit. But Alan, the last time we talked to you, it was in the second hour of 24 of a marathon charity podcast before the season started. I was probably pretty sprightly at the time. It didn't last, but we didn't really know what this season had to hold for us. We asked for some predictions. They're not embarrassing for once, so I'm not throwing anything back in anyone's face. But you had Chelsea City, Liverpool United, Arsenal in 6th, Palace, Watford, and Norwich going down. So pretty astute, if I do say so myself. You're pretty on target. But a lot has happened since then. After a slow start, we have really kind of put things together a little bit. But I want to obviously get your overall viewpoint on what this season's been like for Arsenal, because it really has been one like we haven't seen in a few years.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. And so pleased to say it. And I'm sure all Arsenal fans are. I'm sure all you lads are. You never know in this game, do you? And, I've always had faith in Arteta. It's been shaken once or twice as he's been learning and making some mistakes along the way, which is inevitable really for a new manager. But for him now, he's taken a chance, I think, on several fronts in terms of letting players go and bringing players in that not many people, the wider public, had heard of last summer. But it's come good. As we all know, it's a very young team now with lots of potential. It's only going to get better. And there's a vibe about the place. I've been to the Emirates a few times this season, and it's noticeably louder. That feel-good factor's back. People are excited, and God, how long ago was it that was the case? Really, many fans, I think, as you said, Mike, were coming into this season just not expecting much at all, just fearing it, really dreading it. Didn't know what was awaiting the team. So where we are now, it's brilliant. And, some competitors of ours in that league aren't in as good a position. I think they'll be envious of us in terms of the age group of that squad and the ability within the team.
I'm starting to see some of that from, just in my limited exposure to other teams' supporters, both, random people on social media, as well as my football-loving friends here in the States who happen to support other teams as they're completely misguided. They're starting to, the tide is starting to turn. They're not making fun of us anymore. They're a little worried about us. So you brought something up about a vibe that I want to skip ahead in what I had planned on talking about, because if there's anyone that understands what being in a club that was going through a massive transition with both management style, players, personnel, it's you, and it's 1987, 88 time frame. And a lot of people draw parallels between Mikel Arteta and Arsene Wenger based on kind of the way that they talk about the club, how they handle the media, and so on. But how much correlation do you see between 2021-22 Arsenal and 1987-88 Arsenal at this point?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot, aren't there? I didn't really realise it until other people pointed it out, and I thought, God, yeah. I mean, when I arrived at the club, quite a few of the senior lads had left. The likes of Tony Woodcock, Charlie Nicholas left shortly after I arrived. Graham Ricks left. A lot of the boys that had been at the club a long time, and importantly, perhaps were on big money as well. And George Graham came in, and I think he was instructed to lower the wage bill. And the way he did it was sensational in terms of his recruitment. But I think he'd be the first to admit that he was so fortunate to have that raft of talent coming up through from the youth team. We all know the names.
But here we are once again. I mean, we instead of Kevin Campbell and others, it's Bukayo Saka and it's ESR and it's a mix of those. We've got players in from that might not have necessarily been well known, like Tomiyasu and Tavares from teams that aren't your traditional. I mean, we got one in from Real Madrid, but it's not like it has been in the past. Whereas 30 years ago, it was teams like, I don't know, Leicester and Stoke and Colchester. So, I mean, I see some amazing, and even down to the manager being pretty hardcore about discipline and playing as a unit. I mean, you would know more about Mikel Arteta kind of behind the scenes, obviously, than most of us would. And you would know a lot more about George Graham. But, I mean, are their management styles, in what way are they the same? In what way are they kind of divergent from each other?
First of all, I'd just like to say I think it's harder than ever now to recruit players with hunger and to form a squad that's got that desire that you mentioned and that hunger. Because obviously once the modern day player has been at the top level for 2 or 3 years, he's financially secure. There are no worries from that point of view in terms of how they used to be. You're always fighting for a better contract, fighting for getting that team, for me, score goals, get a better boot deal, get in the England team. It's not quite the same now. So for any manager to retain that hunger in a squad is a great achievement. And you can do that with youth. I mean, that youth's got to be talented. But thankfully, Arteta has managed to get that together. So 10 out of 10 for that. And he'll be delighted with that because he's a hungry manager, isn't he? Just like Saka and Smith Rowe and the like. He's at the bottom of the rung as a manager wanting to prove himself. George Graham, he had a bit more experience having been at Millwall, but coming into the top division for the first time, coming back to his old club as Mikel is desperate to prove himself and leave his mark. So a lot of similarities also in terms of, he draws the line. Both managers would draw a line that you can't step over. And if you do, there'll be ramifications. So it's strong management, certainly in the modern day is not always what we see. And it's a saying in football, you give players an inch, they'll take a mile. And maybe that's truer now than ever. So you've got to be firm.
Alan, do you find, when you were playing throughout your career, obviously we're on an upward trajectory, right? And we have games in hand. How much of that mentally affects the players as well as the locker room and like the narrative of the coaching staff? Is it just, hey, Watford, that's our focus? Or is it like, your next match? Or is it hey, we have these game in hand, we have to plan for this? Like, how does that work for just, in general across the
There's a correlation to May 1989 talking about having games in hand, but maybe looking ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, any player looks at the table, of course he does, because you've only got to switch on the TV or look at social media and Arsenal fans are talking about the top four. And of course, within that dressing room, all the players will be desperate to finish there and get back in the Champions League. And they'll look at the table and they'll see the 3 games in hand and they'll work out which games they might be. And what are the chances of getting the points from that? It's just important that the nerves, the tension don't get to them. But given that it is a young team, I can't really see that happening. There might be nerves in the Emirates as the season progresses, as we get closer and closer to the finishing line and achieving that top four. But I think the boys who are in that team now, that they're going out there playing with freedom, enjoying it. It's a great opportunity for them. They know they're good players. They've got that faith in their own ability, and I don't see any problems from that point of view.
So in that vein, as we kind of move forward and we're in the final sort of third of the season, here is basically where it falls. It seems like there's a kind of confidence in the Arsenal fan base that we haven't seen in a number of years about potentially getting top four, and we're on a really good trajectory. Do you see that as sort of affecting the team, that there is sort of now a little bit more pressure from the fans, that now this really is sort of an expectation they're putting on them? Or do you think that's something that the players sort of feed off of and will continue to sort of progress in their performances because of that, and seeing that sort of light at the end of the tunnel in Champions League football?
Well, the boys have set the bar, haven't they? They've set high standards. Going back to George Graham, he always said, once I've seen your best, whether it's in training or on a match day, I want to see that consistently, day in, day out. So for Arteta, it is setting those high standards. And yes, sometimes when they drop below, the fans will be moaning, the players will be hearing those moans and groans, and it's how you handle it. You've got to get through it. We've seen some tight matches, haven't we, at the Emirates lately, but the boys have come through. They've stuck to the task. So listen, if they're going to make it, they've got to hold the nerve. And I really don't think there will be a problem there, because mainly of the youth and allied that with the talent. I'm not saying they're going to get a top four base. I hope to God they do. I think it's going to be tight, but I don't think nerves will play a part in the end. It might be a lack of, we're just a little bit short of goals. But I don't think nerves will be a problem.
So, first of all, if you're in the chat and you want to ask Alan a question, please put it in now. We have the ability to kind of start and come back to it later. So we've already got one or two in there to ask Alan a little bit later in the show. So don't wait. If you have something to say, go ahead and put it on in there. So not to cast aspersions on any recent Arsenal players or anything like that, but does it bother you? I've always wondered this, ever since Olivier Giroud left the team, as one of the most prolific headers of the ball I've seen in you, does it bother you that no one in Arsenal seems to either be willing or able to use that part of their body to redirect the ball towards the goal, other than center backs on a corner kick? I mean, it's been a long time now that we haven't had anyone that could do that.
Yeah,
it's a vital part of the game.
Well, it's a part of the game, yeah. There's more than one way to score a goal. I'd like to see how many headers Man City get from open play. I don't know. Maybe they get a few, but from memory, obviously a lot of their balls into the box are cutbacks from the byline and what have you, and they're tapping it in. Lacazette's not the biggest, but you'd expect him maybe to be a little better in the air than he is. But yeah, we're not a big attack, are we? We think of Smith Rowe and Odegaard and Saka. So they have to adjust to that. It would be nice to have that option, because sometimes when you're playing against mass ranks of the defending deep, and if you could just get to that byline and swing one in from a decent angle and attack it, it can bypass a lot of defenders. We'll see, Mike. I mean, listen, in the summer, we'll see what kind of striker he buys, or strikers. A lot of mention of Isaac, isn't there, the Swedish boy who's pretty tall. But yeah, we'll see on that front. I'm sure he'd like to change that.
Ooh, I think we got an exclusive, Mike. He said strikers.
That's
Alan clearly knows. Well, Holland and someone else. I don't know who the second person he mentioned was.
Remember when he gave us the exclusive about not being on FIFA? This is even better.
No, all I'm saying is, listen, if Lacazette goes and Nketiah goes, we've got to get more than one, haven't we? We've got to get two. That's the only reason I'm saying that. There's no real inside knowledge there.
Alan, Mike brought up a good point. Like, we don't have an out-and-out striker that likes to attack the ball in the air, but we've played a couple matches this season where we've been like close or breaking records for crosses into the box. Tactically, like, how do you explain that when you know that you don't have that threat? Is it still like, hey, we're just going to wait for the defense to clear it out to like an Odegaard or Smith Rowe in that, top of the box, or how do you explain that?
It depends what type of cross it is, because a whipped ball. Look at Diogo Jota at Liverpool. He's one of the smallest men in their team, and how many headers has he got? He's got that great ability to anticipate, to get ahead of his man in the box and time his jump well. So you don't have to be tall, and the balls played in towards him are quality ones. So obviously, a high looping, aimless cross, it's going to be tough for those boys to win it. But a ball played in with pace, with intent, in a good area, you don't necessarily have to be the tallest to get there first and get your head on it.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. When we talk about summer signings and strikers, we're looking a lot at players who have an aerial ability. That's kind of the desire of the fan base. How much do you think it plays in when we talk about sort of the continuity this team has and the attitude this team has? How much of the character side of incomings do you think the team's looking at? And especially over the last 18 months to 2 years, do you think that's been more of a focus to sort of bring in what are looked at as high character team guys rather than just, star players potentially with a good goal record?
Yeah, I think, Jared, that's absolutely vital. I think they've generated a really good spirit within that dressing room now, and they certainly don't want to spoil it. They have to think long and hard about who they bring in. Yeah, you want to bring in talented lads, but you want to bring in boys that, I mentioned the word hunger and desire before, that want to achieve things in the game. So there's a lot of work goes into it, into the background of players, talking to a lot of people. And that's half the trick. I mentioned Liverpool; they've been brilliant at it over the last few years. Leicester have had great success as well. They've brought in players that haven't upset the apple cart, that have bought into what the manager wants, to what is required in the Premier League. So Arteta's done well so far, hasn't he? You've got to say that with those lads. So let's hope he can continue it. Because up until now, that recruitment side of the club has been totally transformed, I think. And all of a sudden, we're bringing in players who are on the upward curve.
Yeah, and we seem to be hitting the mark on virtually all of them, as opposed to a 33% success rate in the past few years. So one of the players that's been mentioned in the last couple of days by some journalists, by others, is an interesting one, and it's Robert Lewandowski. Now, I don't know if there's any. I mean, I doubt that there's any truth or legs behind this, but the question was posed at this point. Exactly where we are right now, would you bring in a 33-year-old Robert Lewandowski for 2 years, given the level of performance that he's still putting up, knowing that it's going to break the wage structure, but as a way of essentially transitioning to younger, eventually long-term number nines in our club? Would you make that gamble? I guess it was, it would be on a singular player who is just based on raw age and numbers getting close to the end of his career.
It would be a tempting one, wouldn't it? It really would, because I think he's a good character. He would come across and want to do well in a new league. To him, even at 33, he's as fit as a flea. I mean, he takes his shirt off and he's ripped, and he works really hard on his fitness. But it's the antithesis of everything now Arteta's been trying to achieve, really, isn't it, in terms of bringing in young, hungry talent. He tried it with Willian, didn't he, to a certain extent. He thought he would be the difference to get them over the line into the Champions League spot alongside those young lads. And, who'd have thought Willian would be such a failure at Arsenal when he was so consistent at Chelsea, so hard working? You never quite know. I But I think
It
the wages
seemed
would
like a
have been,
low risk signing, and it turned out to be anything but, considering the way he was used and relied on.
Well, having
But
got rid of Aubameyang and Özil and that, to bring in a player on God knows how much a week, I would imagine he'd shy away from that, Arteta.
yeah, I think the question was like, would you bring him in for 2 years at 400,000 a week? And I you know, as much as I love the player and I was salivating over him back when he was at Dortmund, and you know, early on when he was at Dortmund, I mean, the window has passed on that. And if we're thinking about not just the next 2 years, but the 5 or 10 years beyond that, it could be a perfect patch and a very good patch in the sense that he probably scores you 20 goals a year, and that's what you want for the next 2 seasons. But it just seems, you know, then are all the other players going to look at the 400 and say, I want 350 instead of, you know, Saka, who's probably on pace to get extended at 180 and 200, and it just kind of destabilizes things. I think we've got things good right now. Let's not change it up, and that's why I'm shockingly to myself saying no to Lewandowski if he's actually available. Want to take a quick
I'd be
departure.
surprised if Bayern let him go. Gotta say, I would be surprised if Bayern Munich let him go after what he's achieved over the last 2 seasons. But there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of guy that kind of you want to have retire there if you're Bayern Munich. But a quick departure, because I want to ask you a question that I haven't asked you before. And switching off of kind of Arsenal for a moment and talking about Gooners versus cancer. I've always mentioned when you've come on how appreciative I am of the help that you provide. I mean, you've never complained. You've never said no to anything that I've asked you to do. I hope not to ever reach the point where I ask you to do something so ridiculous that you say no. But I thought we might have reached that point with this jersey that we've been talking about a lot lately. And I came up with this idea 2 years ago and brought it to your attention. And to my surprise, you said, you know, it's a great idea. Send me the shirt and leave it with me. And I did. And, you know, I didn't want to keep pestering you about it because I knew it wasn't something that was easy and it probably wasn't going to happen. And a few months later, I get the most incredible piece of Arsenal memorabilia I've ever seen. And it was even better than I had imagined it in my mind. So first of all, thank you. Because I mean, I've had people say, how do I even know this is legit? I'm like, well, ask Alan Smith if it's legit or not. He facilitated it. But are you willing to share with us kind of the process of getting that shirt done? Because I really don't know. I know what needed to get done to make the shirt, but like, tell us a little bit about, you know, how from the point the shirts appear at your house to when they appear at my house, what you had to do and how it all came together.
Yeah, I suppose you've got to thank the English Postal Service for it, first of all. The US one for getting the shirts to me. But what I did, we've got a WhatsApp group for the 89 boys. So I just messaged them and said, listen, you know, this is for a fantastic cause. I sent them the message via WhatsApp and I said, you know, obviously this is the commentary line. Could you put that down and then put your autograph underneath? And, you know, they all said, yes, of course we will. You know, footballers, when they're able to help such a great cause so easily, really, just with a scribble on a shirt, you know, 99 times out of 100, they'll do it. So, I mean, I don't see them all very often. I see Dicko at matches because he works for NBC, so quite often he's at the same game as me. Mickey Thomas, not so much. He comes down every now and again from up in the north west. John Lukic, I very rarely see. Lukey's a bit of a Howard Hughes in many ways.
That was the one I've never had any contact with. The other three, you know, yourself, Lee, and Michael had been on the show before, but Michael had kind of come off of Twitter and it was harder to get in touch with him. So, but the one that you immediately said, I'll check with Lukey to see if he'll do it. And I'm like, oh, this is actually going to happen.
But yeah, no, he was fine. Once I got through to him, I think via his daughter's or his son's phone number. I don't know what it was, but no, they were all great, Mike. So it was just a question of telling them the exact words. and then saying, make sure you leave space for all the rest of us, and then posting it up there and getting it back, and then posting it to the next one. I didn't ask them to, Lukey to post it to Lee. I thought, no, get it back to me, and then I'll do it. So it worked. It worked out. It worked out fine, mate. And then obviously getting it to you, that was the easiest part, really.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I mean, it's work. It isn't just signing something on a shirt or on a piece of paper for you. It was work. It was influence. It was expense. It was time, and it means so much to us. And that, the shirt is currently being auctioned on goonersvcancer.com. Not really auctioned, but it's being raffled off. We decided that the best way to try to maximize the donations was to get 500 entries at $25 or about 18 pounds each, so that you'd have anywhere from 300 to 500 people, depending on how many entries they bought, with a chance of winning this shirt, and each of them not having to really donate that much in order to get a chance. And so I'm excited to draw it when we get to 500. I think we've still got about 35 or 40% at least of the entries still available. So about to start a new publicity blitz on some other channels and so on to get the word out there, because I've been pretty lax on that in recent weeks. But again, thank you so much, Alan, and just my heroes in sport, my favorite team of all time, some of the people that I fell in love with this team because of, to be willing participants in this just means the world to me. So
is that open to everybody, Mike? Just to make it clear, worldwide, anybody can buy that.
Absolutely, anybody. And the more help and publicity we can get to it, the more, it's all you have to do is go to goonersvcancer.com. It's a donation page directly to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And if you donate the equivalent of, or donate $25, you get an entry. If you donate $50, you get 2 entries. And once we hit 500 entries, we'll have raised $12,500 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society with 1 shirt, and we'll immediately draw a winner out of the 500 entries. So
that'd be amazing. I mean, as you've said, it is unique. I've never been a part of a shirt like that. I've been a part of plenty of shirts where most of the team are on it, but to have the commentary lines as well, that is unique. So well worth your
89 heads like myself. I mean, I fall asleep with that commentary running through my head almost every night. So that shirt is fantastic. So sorry for the detour, but please do check that out. Do we want to go to some user questions, or do you guys have anything?
No, let's go to questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, we have some excellent ones that were saved here. The first from Moss FC. Alan, break down our only strikers left: Laka, Eddie, and Balogun. And I'd add to that, do you consider Martinelli a potential 4th in that list? And who do you really like and think that can help this team going forward?
Yeah, I mean, Balogun, I don't know whether he's going to be good enough. He's obviously out on loan at the moment, and that'll do him good. Eddie Nketiah, I tweeted after the match the other day, I thought that was one of his best performances in an Arsenal shirt, because too often I think he's come on. Obviously, he's done well in the Carabao Cup and scored a lot of goals, but sometimes when he's come on in the league, he's jogged through matches, and I just don't think he's put in enough effort. He's not putting himself about. I mean, that's rule number 1 as a substitute. Run about, whatever you do, just run about and put in the effort for the last 20 minutes. And he had a big impact, didn't he, the other day?
Huge.
He really did. Yeah. And so, listen, whether that will make him change his mind, whether he'll think, and maybe whether Arteta will think that, we might have a player here for the next few years who can make an impact. That'll be interesting to see. I don't know what he's thinking, what his agent's thinking. Maybe he's got a few offers lined up. But what I saw there made me think, well, maybe we should be really trying hard to keep him. Lacazette, what do you do? Do you give him a year's contract and see how it goes? Would he accept that? I don't know, because there is going to be a big turnover, isn't there, if both of those go, which isn't ideal. 2 new strikers in perhaps to a new league at a new club. So we'll have to wait and see. It's a big challenge for Arteta, that sorting out the strike force.
Excellent. Andy, you want to grab this one from Danny?
Why are you so hand? Oh no, that's a different question. Who else came in for Alan whilst at Leicester, and what made him pick Arsenal?
Danny needs to read your book.
Yeah, who came in for me whilst at Leicester? Manchester United.
Ooh.
Yeah, I do tell the story in the book. I was at home one night watching telly with my mum and dad. I was still living at home. The phone went, which was always in the hall in England in those days. So my mum went out to answer it, and she answers it and puts it down, and then comes back in to say, "Oh, Alan, Alex Ferguson's on the phone for you." This was in January 1987. So I signed in the March, and we had a brief chat, and it wasn't very long. He wanted me to wait until the end of the season and sign for United, and I said, "Well, Mr. Ferguson, I've kind of made up my mind in my head. I want to join Arsenal, and they want me to sign before the end of the season." As it turned out, I signed on deadline day. So he said, "Okay, if you've made up your mind, good luck with it." And I put the phone down. So that was the end of. I mean, you have to remember back then that United they were still a good few years from winning the title, probably about four or five. So who knows what would have happened in that time? Would I have
Ferguson
stayed?
was in line for the sack at that
Well,
point.
he was at one time, yeah. Would I have stayed in the team? Would they have turned it over to try and get up there and win the league? I don't know. But I also met Chelsea before I spoke to Alex Ferguson. Met Ken Bates and John Hollins, who was the manager at Chelsea at the time, at a hotel in Birmingham. And again, I just didn't fancy it. Didn't even get around to speaking about money, which was very naive of me, because I could have used that as a yardstick for future negotiations. But I just, politely declined.
Well, you
It's
might have
funny,
made the
really.
same mistake that Lee Dixon made, where he tried to pull a negotiating tactic on George Graham and almost didn't make it on the team. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Don't try that with George. Yeah. So yeah, those were the two really. Those were the two, Chelsea and Man United.
Little known
It
fact.
didn't stop you in your tracks for 1 second, huh?
Say that again. Sorry, Andy.
It didn't stop you in your tracks for 1 second to go, should I be thinking about it, or?
Chelsea didn't, because they weren't really competing at that time. They were mid-table, I think. I don't know. United did. I mean, United's a huge club. It was then.
Yeah.
It is now, obviously. And to turn down them, you put the phone down. You think, "Oh, have I done the right thing?"
Yeah.
But I didn't think that for too long, really. And once I'd signed for Arsenal, I just didn't look back. I never had any regrets. I never thought about that phone call for a second, really.
What most people don't realize is that Manchester United was so stung by your rejection that they stewed on it for 17 years. And in 2004, they went out and signed themselves a completely different Alan Smith.
That's it. They got there in the end. Well,
they didn't even know who the Alan Smith that they signed was. They're like, we got to get ourselves an Alan Smith, and so they did. And by that point, you weren't available anymore. So little known fact there. Yeah. You get trivia on this podcast. Jared, what's up?
All right, so we're going to go to the next one from Moss again. This is kind of a common question that I think a lot of people are going to have heading into the summer. Who are you hoping or rate the highest that would fit in with our youngsters up top in terms of the summer buying? And he mentioned someone like Isaac, who's a little bit taller. And I would kind of add to that question, do you think, given the youth we have in those front positions, that we will go for another 20, 21-year-old player? Or do you think that's an area that we may try and add a little bit of maturity to the starting 11?
Yeah, it's a good question, really, because obviously bringing in a 21-year-old to lead the line for Arsenal is a big ask. So do you bring somebody a few more years down the line, 24, 25? I'm sure Arteta wouldn't be averse to that. And Isaac, I mentioned him earlier. How old is he? Early 20s. He's not young, I don't think, is he? But I mean, Mike mentioned Martinelli earlier, and I didn't end up answering the question. He is possibly an option through the middle. We've only really seen him on the flank, but as time goes on, he could possibly develop into a choice for Arteta through the middle. it's a totally different game, obviously, from out wide. But that might be something that could be possible. But as for possible targets, I don't know. Obviously, the boy from Fiorentina went to Juventus, and he looks a good player. I saw him score on his Champions League debut the other night, and he looks a handful. That didn't work out, but you've always got to have Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, haven't you, in recruitment? And I wouldn't mind betting that they have got very nearly sorted some signings that they can press the button on once the transfer window opens, because I think they're in that position now. As much as they'd like to have done something in January, difficult, but I would like to think that they're in a good position once the season finishes to pounce and get one or maybe two strikers.
Do you think it was a gamble to? I mean, I'm all for not overpaying or going to Plan E and Plan F if you don't get your Plan A, which is clearly what happened in January with our transfer window, and the lack of reinforcements coming in. We didn't get the guys we really wanted, and we weren't going to go and pay for people that we didn't want to pay that for. But I mean, was that a significant gamble to you, and is it one that you feel will pay off as far as keeping lean and mean and it's in a structure, but possibly giving up the best possibility, not giving up, but not having the full effort to get top four that you could have?
Well, listen, it's a gamble, isn't it? Because we are desperately short of strikers, and one or, God forbid, two injuries, and we're playing a false number 9 all of a sudden in Smith Rowe, whatever. So it is a gamble. It's a calculated gamble from Arteta if he can see it through and hopefully get a Champions League spot, and then you can attract a better calibre of player as well. So that's another factor. But you're right. Yeah. I mean, there might have been, I don't know, there might have been an opportunity to get somebody in on loan, a short-term loan, just to bolster the numbers up front. But obviously that wasn't possible. The quality of player wasn't there for Arteta. So at the end of the day, you've got to stick with your principles and your standards, more importantly, and not just bring anybody in for the sake of it. But he'll have his fingers crossed now at every game that he doesn't get a serious injury to one of his strikers. Yeah,
I mean, I think it would have been a serious gamble. I'm willing to look at the best of it. I didn't want to bring in a bunch of destabilizing, the wrong people who weren't going to be better than the ones that we already have starting. And a lot of clubs this next 4 months are going pretty lean as far as numbers are concerned. It's just the way that the game is right now. Quick comment from Gary, who said he got kicked out of the 89 WhatsApp group. Can you add him back in, please? Thanks in advance. And you know who else is in the 89 WhatsApp group?
Who?
And is Wayne in that group as well? I'm pretty sure he is. Anyway, Andy's not getting in that group.
I don't know who Wayne is.
Okay, next question. Let's see. We have I think we get asked this every once in a while when we have you or Kevin or Leon, but you can decline if you want. But Don Juan asks, what's the craziest story you can tell us about Ian Wright?
I think you've asked me this one before.
Yeah, I couldn't remember whether we'd ask you or not. So Don, I'm sure you can look in Wikipedia for crazy stories about Ian Wright.
Yeah, I don't know about crazy. Yeah. Somebody asked me something similar recently, and the thing I remember about Wrighty, I mean, the first thing I remember is that you heard him coming before you saw him. He was such a loud, outward-going character, full of confidence and energy, always kind of dominated the dressing room. But the thing I always think of with Wrighty is a bit of a sadder moment was in the semi-final of the Cup Winners' Cup at Highbury against Paris Saint-Germain when he got booked in that first half, and he was beside himself at half time. He was crying, and George Graham and some of the boys had to calm him down because there was another 45 minutes to play. And I give him credit, he did a great job for the lads. He worked his heart out and made sure we got over the line and got to the final, because it was a dream come true to play in a European final for any player, and he played such a huge part to get us there. And then on the last hurdle, he'd fallen. So yeah, it's not a crazy story, but it just gives you an idea of how wedded he was to the game, how desperately he wanted to achieve things and be a big part of it, and that was a big occasion that he missed.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we all know that Ian has is emotion and intensity and that he cares and loves for the game. So, yeah, Andy, you want to take this one?
Yeah, what decision that the club has made over the last year has been the most important in your opinion, and why?
Oh, over the last year, I suppose trust in the manager first and foremost. He's there's been some bumps in the road, and another club might have started to lose confidence in him, thinking, well, he's a young manager and maybe we should go for something more experienced. So yeah, I think that's been a big plus, because if your manager hasn't got that authority, if the players don't think he's there for the long term and he's in a stronger position than you, well, then you've got problems. And I think at Man United with Ralph Rangnick, I think that's a problem there. He's obviously just a temporary measure. Players are thinking, well, I don't need to impress you. Come August, you're not going to be here, and I am. So the manager has to be really a powerful entity at a football club, the most powerful. So I think I'd say that, and then obviously the signings that he's made have come good. So it's all in one, really.
All right. Thanks to Daniel for the super chat, by the way. Great show, guys. Keep up the good work. We don't have to be any good when we have Alan Smith on, because he pulls us up to a level that we want to be at. So, and just as I say that, one of us disappears. So, next question, Jared. First of all, Lori, maybe get it in the match day program. He's talking about the 89 shirt. I am actually 100% already working on something, and Mark Brindle's gonna help me put it in the match day program. So hopefully that'll be in a game coming up. I'd love to get the match day fans' eyes on that raffle for sure, because a lot of them probably
help sales.
Yeah, a lot of them really probably have a very strong attachment to that game. So Jared, you want to take this?
Sure. So this is from our good friend Mark. Glad to see you in the chat as always. And this is probably a common question you get all the time now. Alan, what one player from the 89 season do you think would benefit our current team the most? And he adds on there, feel free to name yourself.
Wow. Tricky one.
It's got to be Perry Groves, right?
Super sub, Grossy. Yeah. I mean, we had a very good central midfield that day. And obviously, we've got some good players in there now with Thomas Partey and Xhaka and the like. But you're never quite sure of the balance there just now. On that night, we had Michael Thomas, who was just never stopped, take away his goal, forget about that altogether. His overall performance was immense in terms of his stamina. And he was next to Kevin Richardson. So I think that balance is maybe something that Arteta's still looking for. Richo would hold more and he'd be a digger and win the ball back and give a simple pass. Mickey would be up and down all match. Great athlete. So, yeah, of course, we need a centre forward. Of course we do for the next 4 or 5 years. But within that team, I'd look at that central midfield partnership and hope that Arteta can get something similar in the next few years.
Yeah, I think it's unfair. You need two players. I think you need Rocky and you in there, because that would transform this current lineup. We'd be a dynasty at this point. We have a user question from our compatriot here at the Gooners podcast, Mike Hernandez, who's asking, this is kind of a then versus now question. Did you hear a lot of negativity comments when someone would, obviously you're not reading on Twitter or Instagram stuff from random people, but you would probably hear it in and around the stadium at other parks. Was it easier to brush off negativity and negative comments in your playing days than you think it is now for the current athlete?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we would always read the papers, and it was difficult not to read them the day after, win, lose or draw, and you'd have your favourite football writers and your least favourite, who you always thought had got it in for you, and the marks out of 10, 4 out of 10. You're joking, are you? So yeah, you do that, but then now of course social media's replaced that, hasn't it? And the boys, and you'd like to tell them not to do it, but it's a generation that it's just a part of their lives, and they are bound to get involved with social media. Yeah, and it can affect players badly. It could affect us to a certain extent, but then I stop reading the paper for a bit. But with social media, it snowballs as well. So I think it gets to the players much more. I've heard tales of players going into the jacket pocket at half time and having a look at Twitter to see what people are saying about them. It gets to that length, and it's ridiculous.
What would you say about? What would you say about enforcing blocking that out? I mean, I don't know that you could really enforce a player on their private time to not access social media, but I mean, we've certainly seen social media bring down individual players for controversial comments, or even for just liking something that you're not supposed to be giving a thumbs up to because it has to do with it. I mean, if you had said to someone in 1990, this top player is going to be turned on by his own fan base because he liked an Instagram post from a rival player, first they'd be like, what the hell is Instagram? But then, I mean, it just seems so ridiculous. But so I mean, would you ban would you drop your cell phone off when you get off that bus and give it back to them at the end of when they're back on the bus on the way home? Or
well, yeah, I think some managers have banned them within the dressing rooms, not just on a match day, but training as well. But you see, if somebody's you saw Liverpool having won the Carabao Cup. A lot of the boys were filming the celebration, so they've got the phones in there. But I think any manager worth his salt, if he did see somebody reaching and having a sly glance at his phone at half time, he would come down heavy. But I think managers are conscious about that, about not having a group of players in the dressing room all with their heads down looking at the phones, and important that you go into lunch after training and you do actually talk to each other. So I think there is a conscious effort by managers to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I know. Was it you? Again, I'm fortunate enough that I've kind of blurred together some of my conversations with members of your '89 team. But someone was talking about the fact that the talks between players on the bus, to and from the games, on the coach, were so vital. And now you've got people with their headphones in and they're just tuned out, and they're or they're posting to their Instagram story, and it just it's not even just an off the pitch thing. It has to go to teamwork and the level of kind of camaraderie that you have, that players are kind of in their silos as opposed to forced to be together in team building.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't always be talking about the game, but the fact that you are just talking and chatting casually, on the way up and having a laugh and a joke, it is that team bonding, isn't it? You get to know each other better, and that helps out on the pitch. A lot of different nationalities now, so that plays a part with the language barriers and all that. But yeah, I think it's the job of a manager to make sure you can bring them all together, and the best ones do, don't they? The likes of Guardiola and Klopp, they manage to do that.
I think that you should, when you get on the coach to the stadium, whether you're traveling or whether you're at home, you drop your phone in the bin, and then if you win the game, the phones are waiting for you on your seat in the dressing room. If you lose the game, like I used to do with my son, I mean, you have to be without the phone for a whole day afterwards, because by then,
God.
That's what I would do.
That's an infringement of their human rights, that is, Mike. You wouldn't be able to get away with that.
That's what I'm known for, though, is infringing on people's human rights. I have tried and struggled to find a way of thanking you in any sort of permanent or fiscal way for what you've done. I finally figured out how to do it. We have Danny, who has purchased your book online.
Oh, look at that. Brilliant.
Heads Up, a great book. I read it in one weekend before we had you on the first time because I wanted to make sure, I was trying to be a proper journalist, and I loved it. I mean, I haven't read a book since or prior to that.
Okay.
But I did read that one. That's how I knew all about Alv Church and Ken Fryer's bathroom. So
that's it. Yeah.
Let's see. I think we've got a couple more questions. Again, the comparison questions. People love these, and I'm sure you hate them. But score prediction: 89 team versus Invincibles.
Score. Oh dear.
In a two-legged match, one happening with 89 rules, the two subs and the proper tackling, and then one, in the handbag era with the silky.
As much as I'd like to say 89 would win, I mean, some of the best players I've ever seen in the English game in that Invincible team, obviously Henry and Bergkamp, Vieira and the like. So I think they would nick it maybe in both games. We'd have a good go at them, maybe try and ruffle them up a bit. But that was the thing with the Invincibles. They could handle themselves physically as well, couldn't they? And Bergkamp could a little over-the-top tackle when it was minded to. But we wouldn't roll over. We'd keep going. We'd get under their skin if we could. But they did draw a lot of games, the Invincibles, didn't they, that season? And our season in 1991, we drew a lot less games, but we did lose one game, of course. So that's what separates us. But no, I always say when people ask, best player you've seen, I always say Thierry Henry. I just think he was magnificent. He kind of reinvented the striker's role in many ways, and plenty of them were some of the best players I've seen. So I've got to go for Arsene Wenger's side.
Well,
what the score would be, I don't know. 4-2.
It's a humble response.
I would like to think realistic, haven't you? I would like to think it would go to a shootout, to penalty kicks, and then right before the penalty kicks, Arsene Wenger would bring in Alex Manager. So I'm trying to think of who was because I wasn't plugged in at the point. So he'd bring in the backup goalkeeper who would miss who would miss 11 save opportunities and then sky it over the net. That would be the storybook ending. So again, Daniel with the super chat. Daniel, by the way, has a great channel. Have you been on with Daniel before? Daniel Bailey.
No.
Well, I highly recommend it if he reaches out to you. He's a great guy. He's a member of the fan forum. I guess when they elected a member from kind of the foreign fans, the fans with disabilities and so on. And Daniel's a guy that's been blind for a long time and knows more and can describe better the action in an Arsenal game than I can. And I'm fully sighted. So he wants to know if the book is available in audio format, which explains why he's asking that.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have actually said that and asked that, and I was kicking myself that I didn't actually put it to the publishers. It's not available in audio, which I think it would have been a good one, because obviously everybody knows my voice from commentating and FIFA and that. But unfortunately, it's not. No, and it's probably too late to do it now.
Well, I think it's never too late to do it. We obviously have people that will buy it. I'll be happy to do the voiceover for it if you want. If it comes to I want to do it, but I don't want to actually take the time to do it. Also, because what people do with those audiobooks is they cut and splice the words and they put it into really inappropriate comments where it's you saying it, but it's you saying it in 8 different sentences that were all cut and taken out of context. So you got to be careful about that. That's probably why.
I would voice it myself, but maybe there's a part for you, Mike. And Jared, you could be George Graham, and Jared could be Rocky Rocastle or somebody when I do quote them. So,
speaking of which, I almost completely forgot to mention the last time I saw you, which was not on our podcast. It was at the Barbican. Back in November. an amazing night. And I've been remiss in not having the composer. This was an Arsenal. How would you describe it? It was an '89 team, kind of an Anfield '89 expose, or watching it on video, set to an incredibly scored classical music live.
Original music written to go with the action. So an edited version of the match, and this composer wrote some music to go with it, the highs and the lows, and obviously the high and building up to Mickey's goal, and the cymbals crashing and everything. I mean, it was the BBC Symphony Orchestra, wasn't it? 86 piece, I think, was it the BBC? But an 86-piece orchestra. It was brilliant, because I don't think they'd been together in such numbers for a long time because of COVID, and to listen to them on the night was fantastic. But yeah, a lot of people that went said that they really enjoyed it. It was just something different, wasn't it?
It was, and I was so fortunate to find out about it, because I mean, I was supposed to have left London, and I ended up staying a week longer for reasons I won't go into, but I was very thrilled, because not only did I get to see that, but 2 nights later I was able to be at the Arsene Wenger David Dean event as well, and just those two things, just bringing back the good memories, the positivity. All but one person in attendance at the two things combined was absolutely just loving do you remember the guy shouting from the back of the room at the Barbican at George Graham about why he went to Tottenham? I'm glad you don't remember that.
I didn't hear it.
He was very drunk and very obnoxious, and we were about to attack that guy, because he was just the whole time during the panel. Because after this was 3 parts. The first part was just pure orchestral symphony music, and I don't think anyone expected it. I certainly didn't. And so people were like, "Where's the football?" It was a beautiful piece. But I went there with my friend Lee Judges, and he was like, "I thought you told me this was an Arsenal musical." I said, "No, the players aren't going to come out onto the stage and sing like, 'Then I passed it to Alan Smith.'" That's what he thought it was going to be. But I was like, "No, just be patient, because clearly there's some musical involvement, and then we're going to get to the Arsenal bit." But it was fantastic. And then you, Lee Dixon, Nigel Winterburn, and George Graham all sitting together, being interviewed and talked to by Amy Lawrence, and having the kindness and the grace to come out and kind of greet people afterwards was really enjoyable. So it was great to get to see you again there. And a really, really fun event. I think you can go to the Barbican website, and there's a link that you can watch it at now. Okay. So if anybody wasn't lucky enough to be there or listen to it on the night, I highly, highly recommend it. I think we are. Hold on a second. Ask him the tyranny question. Super Kev is wrong. The tyranny question. I'm actually struggling to remember what the tyranny question was. Be more specific. Hold on. I'm scrolling up to see this. Oh, here we go. Okay, from Sophie at the Highbury Squad, who hosts obviously a great podcast with your teammate, your ex-teammate Super Kev. Please ask Smudger if he thinks Tierney is an experienced player. An interesting question.
Oh, right. Okay. I wonder if she thinks he's not. I don't know.
I'll tell you what they think after you answer.
I think he is an experienced player. He obviously had a lot of experience up at Celtic, winning trophies and being a regular. And he's come down and been a great fan favourite. He's obviously a fine talent who will get better. He's had 1 or 2 down moments. He's had his injury problems, but he's a great character. A lot of people see him as a future captain of Arsenal. No nonsense player, old school in many ways, and crosses a great ball. So he's got most of the things you'd want from a left back.
I think you've just made Sophie very happy. So please screenshot this, Sophie. You can give it to Kev on the next show. Sorry, I didn't see it at first, but
Super Kev says no. Okay, yeah,
that's a surprising one. I mean, he's one of the few guys on the team with Champions League experience, international experience. He's captain Celtic. I mean, he's got a lot going for him. I'm a little surprised Super Kev said no.
You know, what I like about their podcast is that it contains, it's the one podcast that has a host who has the experience of not only playing football but playing for the Arsenal and loving and coming through the system for the Arsenal. Yet their incredible viewership, which has grown organically and fantastically, they don't just simply. I mean, Kevin is at the point where he isn't Super Kevin Campbell, who must be respected and agreed with at all times. He has an opinion. People will let him know when they think it's wrong. Not just Sophie, but the chat as well. And I can't. You see me on there a lot, including yesterday, talking about the financial reports that come out. It's because I can't love enough what they're doing there, and I just like being a part of it. So thanks, Soph, for returning the favor today, and it's a great question to ask. And now you can hold one over Kevin after your big argument that you did in front of me yesterday. So we've hit an hour, Alan. I can't thank you enough again for everything that you have done for our podcast. You are on our 100th show. You've been on our podcast, our charity fundraising show, all the work behind the scenes that you've done. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I just hope that the relationship continues, and that I don't finally just start kind of needling at you for things until you tell me to go away. That would be my biggest nightmare.
No. It's been good to see you both, and wish Gooners v Cancer all the very best. Let's hope you raise lots of money for that shirt, and you should do. You should do, right, mate. So congratulations to you for instigating this. Brilliant.
Well, and thank you for your annual participation and support. And Jared, who has gotten very involved in Gooners versus Cancer this year, I'm sure feels the same way. Jared's kind of been my right-hand man when it came to last year's and so far this year's campaign. So it's becoming a team thing, and I'm hoping it'll become a football thing as opposed to just an Arsenal thing going forward. Those are the plans I have, but we'll see how it goes. But we're already ahead of the game with support of you and your teammates and everybody else. So, Jared, where are we going to see you this week? Any announcements? Are you going to start doing your own podcast as well, like Mike did?
No, I wish I had the time to do that. The few I get to jump on with our regular group is about all I can handle. But look forward to doing them again, Alan. Absolute pleasure to get and sit and talk with you for the hour. It's been great. And I know Mike said it, but it needs to be said again. The work you've done to create kind of, I think, the most unique piece of Arsenal memorabilia out there to raise a good amount of money for a really good cause has been fantastic. So thank you again.
No, pleasure, Jared. Pleasure.
The last thing I quickly want to say in a selfish way is I've been on a high all day today for two reasons. One is knowing that we're going to get to talk to Alan. The other is that my son came home today from school, Jake, who I hope you'll meet soon. He's 18. He's in his final year of high school, and he got a perfect score on his big public speaking speech, where you had to give a speech about someone who has positively influenced your life. And I didn't know. I just assumed he would do Mesut Ozil. But he apparently picked me, and he talked about how our shared experiences through sport, and specifically through Arsenal and traveling overseas and having that be a big bond for us, has kind of shown him how he wants to eventually have a relationship with his own kids. And I just proud of him for getting the perfect score in the exam. But I mean, gotta be doing something right, I guess, to have a son like that. So I'm excited to be over in England and build the next chapter in that. And hopefully if you're on commentary for the Brighton game, or even if you're away at Palace, we'll hopefully find a way of having a quick chat or a hello. But if not, we'll do it again sometime. So
okay.
Thank you, Alan.
Great
Thank
stuff.
you, Jared. And thanks to everybody in the chat. I hope you're okay, Andy. If you had to log off, I certainly didn't see it, but we're going to assume that you're okay. And until next time,